Hi, everybody. Richard Shelp with Executive Speakers Bureau, and this is the 6th edition of Behind the Curtain. In Behind the Curtain, we tell you a little secret about one of our favorite speakers, and we teach you something that can help you with your speaking business. Today's guest is Dr. Thom Mayer. Dr. Mayer is the medical director for the NFL Players Association. He is the author of Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless, and he is truly a leadership guru with millions of experiences throughout his life. Welcome, Dr. Mayer.
Richard, thank you. It's an honor to be on. I love my relationship with Executive Speakers Bureau, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely love having you on. I tell you, one of the things that's amazing to me with all the different people that I've interviewed and talked to is that they're so successful, but they come from simple beginnings. And I understand that you were the first person in your family to go to college. So tell us a little something about that.
Yeah, Midwestern boy, born and raised, born in Illinois, educated in high school in Indiana. My parents were World War II veterans, both my dad and my mom. So simple upbringings. My dad was a tanker in Patton's Third Army, tank maintenance in particular. And so I grew up in that kind of a background, and it was really an honor to kind of represent them as I went along. And they were, fortunately, they attended all my football games, both in high school and college. And, you know, I truly still, I've lost them both over time, but feel like I'm carrying them with me as everyone listening is carrying their loved ones with them. So it was an honor taking them to college and taking them to medical school as well. And
I understand, too, that there was a janitor at your college that had some influence on whether you went to medical school or not. And by the way, just as a side note, because, you know, we work with Rudy, it's almost like a Rudy story.
Yeah.
So go ahead, tell me a little bit about that.
Most football players go to play football in order to get a college education. Mm-hmm. I went to college so I could continue playing football because my goal was to eventually play in the National Football League. And I was a theology major. First of all, they asked me 6 months in as a freshman, what's your major? And my answer was, major what? What are you talking about? You didn't say anything about that when you were recruiting me. They know you got to major in some subject. And so I chose theology because you didn't have to write papers. Mm-hmm. I mean, you wrote papers instead of taking tests. And I always had a healthy curiosity for why do we do what we do, belief systems and all that.
Sure.
So I'm, going along. I'm in my junior year. And my theology professor and a biology professor, whose name you cannot make this up, was Dr. Prey. Sounds allegorical.
Yes, it does.
Pulled me aside and said, has it ever occurred to you, you might have more influence if you became a doctor instead of staying in theology? And I told him, look, I don't think about anything except football. I'm just going forward. But I started taking pre-med courses, but usually you're in your freshman year. Mm-hmm. I was in my junior year. So I took Chemistry 101. Dr. Keith White was the chairman of the department and taught that introductory course. And we're going along. I was doing okay, not great. We took the first exam. And the first exam, I opened it up. Question number 1. A mole is Avogadro's number of particles, or then 5 A through E. Well, I thought, this has been fun. Back to theology, Avogadro? Who's Avogadro? I don't remember Avogadro. What's his number? No clue. A mole, I remember thinking, isn't that a critter? I mean, I think those are out in the lawn there somewhere. Oh, yeah. So I started going A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, backwards, and it looked like, in football, we call it a sluggo route, a slant and go route. That's what my answer sheet looked like. 100 questions, but at the end, there was a blue envelope, and typed on there, it said bonus question, and underneath that, it said, if you get this right, you get an A on this test, no matter what you did on the first 100. Well, was I the first one done? Yeah. I mean, when you don't read the questions, I didn't even read the questions. It was just ABC. It was sluggo the whole way through. So I unfold the envelope, and it says, bonus question, get an A. What's the name of the man who cleans this room every night so that you can have a nice place to learn? And I went up to Dr. White, and I said, Dr. White, this bonus question. And he smiled, and he said, yeah. I said, you want his first name or his last name? He said, Thom, if you can give me his first name and his last name, I'll not only give you an A on this test, I'll give you an A in the course. As long as you work hard, as long as you show up. I smiled, and I said, what if I can give you the names and ages of his 6 kids and his wife's name? He actually stood up. You know, he took his glasses off, how some people point their glasses. That's what he did. He said, Thom, if you can do that, I'll not only give you an A in this course, I'll give you an A in every chemistry course you take, as long as you show up and as long as you do your work. So I wrote down name, kids, wife, and he was as good as his word. I got A's.
Unbelievable.
So 2 points.
That.
One is I became a doctor not because of my innate intelligence and smarts and all that stuff, but because of a janitor at the college I went to. And, you know, I think it teaches you that there are no unimportant people in life.
I absolutely love that story.
Oh, thank you.
That is a fantastic story. True story. Well, let me take a side move, because obviously you've got great stories that you can tell across the board. You've been involved in so many historical events that have occurred over the last couple of decades. But I'm going to take you to January of 2023. In January of 2023, there was a major mishap that occurred at an NFL football game in which a player had to be resuscitated. And the way it was all set up allowed that person to survive. And you had some involvement in that. Can you tell me a little bit about what you and the NFL Players Association did that made a difference in that person's life?
Yes, thank you. It's on that day, my oldest son, our oldest son, his wife, and their 4 kids, our grandkids, were with us in Wyoming. They came out to ski. And we were watching the game. We were out to dinner at a restaurant, so I saw the play happen when it happened. And I knew this was very serious. And my phone started lighting up, as you might guess, given my position. One of the phone calls was from my boss, DeMorris Smith, D. Smith,
right,
telling me, you know, charter a plane, get to Cincinnati as fast as you can. So I had the privilege of going to the bedside and meeting his parents. They welcomed me in. All the conferences with the treating physicians, many of whom I already knew, they included me in that as a friend. And so, and most importantly, I think, you know, I got a chance to look in Damar's eyes, both when he had a tube down his throat to breathe for him because he was quite ill, but also to meet with all the doctors and more importantly, his parents. And the story is, you know, how did those doctors just happen to be on the sideline? And the answer is they didn't just happen to be there. Woods Curry, Brent Betts, and Jason McMullen are their names, because I think names are important.
Absolutely.
The 3 emergency physicians who were there. They were there because years before, the NFLPA and I demanded that there be emergency action plans. So got to have good people, got to have good processes, but you got to have good planning, no matter what business you're in, whether it's healthcare, banking, construction. You know, the people, the processes, and the plans all intersect into this wonderful ballet of a man being saved, his parents being grateful for that, and the integrity they showed, because it's not just the people, the planning, and the processes, it's the character of the people. So it was a absolute honor and privilege to be a part of that. The
results of what happened, I'm sure it makes you feel like you were just privileged to be, even though you were an integral part, you were privileged to be part of that miracle. Really.
Absolutely. But, you know, the term servant leadership, I think I love the term. Robert Greenleaf originated that term as best we know, but it's often oversaid and under acted, meaning what do your actions in the moment tell you about your character, tell you about what you really believe in. And so it was a chance to be a servant leader. It was a chance to be able to step back and say, you know, someone says, you saved Damar's life. No, but I put a plan in place and demanded that that plan be followed, which resulted in great people saving a great person's life.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Well, you know, part of what we do in this podcast is we try to teach people a little something that can help them with their speaking business. Mm-hmm. You, as was mentioned throughout some of your answers that you've already given, you're very leadership focused. Your thoughts about leadership, your approach to leadership is unique in some ways. And that can, I think, be very helpful to some of the speakers that are out there. Can you talk a little bit about your unique view of leadership?
Sure. First of all, I don't think there's ever a reason to speak except to help people. And so every time I speak, I think, how can I help these people? That requires listening to what their issues and problems are before going on site, not a canned talk that you take off. But you then blend that, and it struck me that there's 60,000 books on leadership in Amazon alone. Mm-hmm. There's millions of articles in the literature on Amazon, or not on Amazon, but on any website, chat box, all that kind of stuff. And yet we're drowning in leadership. And you know, if I ask the audience, name 3 things you learned from all those books, they often struggle to say what they are. So
I would too.
That's where I got the thought that leadership is worthless, but leading is priceless. It's a very contrarian statement. So it's, you know, incumbent upon me to explain it.
Yes.
The thought is leadership is worthless because it's just something you say. Mm-hmm. It's a noun, and anyone can say anything. But leading is a verb, and what you do, specifically what you do. And everyone is leading every day. You don't have to be the boss to lead. A single mother leads. Every, a Uber or Lyft driver leads. A bank manager, a bank president leads, but so do the tellers. And so do the environmental services, housekeeping folks. And the same is true in every walk of life. So I tried to focus, and am often asked to talk about that subject, on the details of what does it mean to lead in the active voice all day, every day.
That's fabulous. It's fabulous. And I love your view of it because I totally agree with it. There is not a person that I know that is not involved in leading in some form or fashion. And title is not about leading at all. So I think that's key. You are very skilled in storytelling. Anybody that's listening so far can already hear a couple of great stories that you shared with us. Tell us how you use storytelling to really illustrate your points to do with leading and leadership.
Excellent. The great Danish writer, and this is the theology part of my college, Isak Dinesen, her real name was Karen von Blixen. Mm-hmm. The movie Out of Africa with Meryl Streep and Robert Redford is that story. But she said famously, but not famously enough, all sorrows can be born if you can put them into a story or tell a story about them. So when I talk, and I spend more time speaking outside of healthcare than I do in healthcare, is helping people say, what's the story? Or can you become the chief storyteller for your patient, for your customer, for those you serve, for the teams that are under your charge, your mentorship? And what is their story? Actually, Twain said it as well. He said, if you want to rise to the literary heights, to the meteoric heights of fame, don't talk about man, talk about a man. So the ability to watch and see what's happening and see the story, observe the story. I mean, when I'm at the airport today, I'm going to be observing stories that I may well use in one of my talks. Now, I also give talks, weave into that the stories of NFL players,
yes,
of coaches, of plays, of the experience I had leading as the command physician at the Pentagon on 9/11, leading as incident commander for inhalational anthrax that same year. So I think it's, particularly in the speaking business, it's not just telling the story, it's being a sponge to observe stories and say, how does that fit with what I say I believe? And am I going to enact that when I do it? You know, we just talked about a janitor who changed my entire life.
Right.
And to the extent that I've had any impact on anyone, I'm not claiming there's all that much, but they ought to be thanking him, not me.
That's absolutely fabulous. I love your answers. thank you for being our guest today, Dr. Mayer.
It's
Thank
my
you so
privilege
much.
entirely. Thank you very much.
And thank you, audience, for your attention. And you stay tuned for future episodes when you can truly find out what is behind the curtain.